Mike. How you doing today, brother?
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm doing fine.
Yeah, you're in North Carolina. I was just down there, man. It's beautiful. But why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you've been up to over the last handful of years?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mike Yarbrough. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina with my wife. We've been here since like 96. So we've seen the city just grow like crazy. I'm originally from Tennessee.
Mm,
We raised our boys here. They're off somewhere else now doing their own thing. And I've been an entrepreneur at heart and a little bit in practice for many years. But we started something called Rustic and Main about 10 years ago. And that just took off like a shot. And so what we do there is we actually make wedding bands and engagement rings. We do a lot of custom work, and especially for our wedding bands, we try to integrate things that are meaningful into the bands.
mm.
So like somebody will send us materials that are unique to them or special to them, like a piece of wood from Grandpa's barn or old whiskey barrel stave or something. And we'll create something that's really meaningful, and it just has a big sentimental attachment. And so I think that's part of the thing that's helped us to kind of catapult to where we are now.
So you say for a long period of time, you've had
Yeah.
this entrepreneurial idea in mind, or in some way, shape, or form. When did that start?
I mean, I think technically it started when I was a kid because I was looking back on a moment when like I was in, I don't know, little school. I don't know what's before middle school, elementary, I guess. Um, and we homeschooled. So I'm like, what schools do I've totally thrown out my
Right.
mind. But I remember bringing I had some Matchbox cars or Hot Wheels, something like that. And my grandmother had probably picked them up at a yard sale. I had several of them. I brought them to school, and I was like, the kids were going crazy about them. They weren't really my thing.
Hmm.
And I said, well, I'll sell you one. I probably sold the first one for like a nickel or 10 cents. Well, then all the other kids are just like, oh man, I want one too. So like
Ooh,
this went on for about a week,
learned about supply
and I'm
and
just,
demand. Demand's
I
high,
did.
supply's low. We got
Yeah.
to crank our prices.
And kids are easy to sell to as well. So,
Yeah.
I started selling these things, and for about a week, I was selling these. I don't know how much money I made. Not a lot. It's not that kind of good of a story. But at some point, a teacher shut it down. Like I think a parent called about it and
Mm.
like shut the whole thing
Big
down.
government
But in
always
my,
coming in and stopping the guy from making his money.
I know, right? Yeah, yeah. So I should have known back then that was going to be more of a challenge than it seemed.
But I
But
bet you
as an
I
adult,
bet you if you'd have cut the school in, for 35 to 37%, that would have been a
yeah, that's right.
change
Like
of
the
tune.
principal kind of get their piece,
Yeah,
and we'll just
exactly.
overlook this
Exactly.
one thing. They could have been a big thing. I could still be selling them today. You never know.
Yeah, yeah. I probably would have been retired by now, man. Compound interest. That would have been a long
I
time
know.
ago.
Gosh. But as an adult, another kind of funny story. I was a software dev for a number of years.
Okay.
I wrote a little app, and I sold it, on the marketplace for mobile phones.
What was that?
And this
What
was
was the
it,
application
it,
for?
it was called. This is a terrible name. It's called Green Thumb. It sounds like it's for gardening, but it wasn't.
Mm.
So back in the day, when you wanted to synchronize your like Microsoft Money or QuickBooks or Quicken, it didn't always sync with the bank like that day.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So you would have to wait a couple of days and all that. So I wrote this little app where you could just put in your details for your expenses that day, and then plug in your phone, and boom, it synchronizes with Microsoft Money, which is now defunct, or Quicken. And I had a sale within like a 5 minutes or something after posting it
It's
online.
usually a good sign.
And yeah, yeah. And so I called my wife up, and I was like, babe, I'm sitting at work, and I'm like, if I sell one of these, I make $7 every 5 minutes. We're about
Yeah.
to blow up,
Yeah.
you know. And it did. I didn't make another sale for like 2 weeks,
Ah,
and it wasn't. I don't know what happened. It was just luck of the timing, I guess. But that app never took off. I didn't become a millionaire,
well,
but
you were
it
you
gave
were
me that
certainly
sort
on
of.
to something, because that's a huge market. Those connectors. I mean, you
Oh
look at
yeah,
like a company
especially back then.
like Plaid.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's a
Hmm.
$1 billion plus company, and all they're doing is like connecting Capital One to your QuickBooks or to whatever bank,
Hmm.
that you need it to connect
Yep.
into.
Yeah, and I was always doing things that I thought were going to they're more like interesting and solve problems for me, but I didn't really know how to market them.
Hmm.
And because I was doing software dev during the day, and then I was doing software dev eventually at night as well, for another app that I'd written that did do well, I just got burned out with it. And I was like, I don't know how to market this, the right way to make money. So I just let it all die.
Mm.
But that's kind of where the entrepreneurial kind of, once you kind of get bit by the bug, you realize you can put something out there that somebody wants to buy. It's like the glass ceiling or whatever that gets shattered, and you're like, oh man, I could really do this. Like this is possible.
Yes, yes, yeah. I would, I don't know what I would call it. I don't know if I would call it the glass ceiling. That gives me like corporate, we can't
Yeah. Oh,
promote
it's
you
true.
because
Yeah.
you're a woman, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But for
Hmm.
me, it's just like once you've done it once and you didn't horribly fail or go bankrupt or lose everything, then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, like I can create a business. And then you start to see opportunities everywhere. This is one of the things that I
Hmm.
advocate really heavily for is like write your business ideas down. Just like have your phone or your notepad and write them down. Don't pre-screen them like, well, someone's probably already invented a cigar of the month club. It's like, don't stop screening, like write it
Yeah.
down and then come back to it at a later point in time before you forget it or go, that's just not it's not worth me writing down. And I'll write down stuff all the time, stuff that's like fanciful, like science fiction, or like this is the
Hmm.
craziest engineering problem, Alex. You definitely aren't going to do this. Just write it down. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
And that I think helps your brain start to see these opportunities out there that sounds like you started to see.
I think so. And another thing that happens is that eventually you can't take action on every idea you have. Eventually, you're going to,
Totally.
and this should be really good confirmation. You're going to see somebody else out there that does it after you, or you're going to find that somebody else has already done it, but maybe in recently, like in the last 5 years, right? And that's another confirmation I think that you should have, that like your idea was valid. You just didn't maybe get to it on time. Maybe it's still something that could be, there's enough market share out there for it. But I think that's a really good validation as well. When you see somebody else who's already got your idea and they've done it, don't discourage yourself, like you said, and say, well, somebody else has already come up with everything. No, say, look, I'm actually a really good person at solving problems. I just got to find the one that maybe somebody else hasn't done, or there's more of a market share for it than you know than there already is.
Yeah, and also, am I the right person to even bring this project to life? Right? Like, I think
Right.
sometimes you also have to be
Hmm.
realistic with yourself. Like, you're a developer. Like, I'm not. I'm not a technical person. AI is getting better. Like, maybe I could become,
Sure.
a technical person. But whenever I do these like pitch contests or whatever for college kids, everybody's got an app. I'm like, are you technical? They're like, no, I'm not technical. And I'm like, look, I'm sure there are examples of someone who was non-technical that started some software or application that just crushed it.
Hmm.
But I think those examples are like the anomaly outlier in that industry. That
Yeah.
industry. So I'm assuming, if I said one of these names, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Snapchats, the LinkedIn's, I'm certain pretty much most of those at least had a technical founder somewhere, maybe not the
Yeah.
only founder, but somewhere. So it's
Yeah.
tough. It's
Absolutely.
tough there on that side.
And you have to be legitimately understanding of the industry needs. So you can't just be like, it'd be cool if,
Yeah.
you know, for some industry that you're really not familiar with and you don't know anything about. Now you can partner with somebody who's in that industry and say, how would I solve this problem for you? So maybe if you're a technical person, you could come up with an app or a solution that's helpful to them. But if you're not in that industry at all, don't just write stuff to write stuff, or don't just put stuff out there, just put stuff out there.
Yeah, but sometimes there is a benefit to being an outsider too, because there's like these.
Oh, sure.
I can't remember what book I was just reading, but they have this kind of idea associated with like the taboos of the industry. It's like, oh well,
Mm,
you can't do X in this industry, and it's
yeah.
like, well, why is that rule in place, and is that rule made to be broken by someone who's like an upstart, kind of like
Hmm.
Carvana did. The rule kind of was like, well, you can't sell cars without like a physical dealership. And they're like, well, why not? And they came in and they broke it. And that like
Yep.
was kind of a unveiling moment for the industry there. So there's also opportunities always in that place.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Yep.
So what was the second app that you developed? You said that went kind of well.
I had this thing called, it was a suite of tools called Invirus. And basically, one of the things that I did for my day job is I had to manage a lot of computers, as well as write software here and there. And I was like, well, there's got to be an easier way to do this. And so basically, I just created a suite of tools that would allow for everything from application installation to just querying computers to see, like, have they got the update? What status or state are they in? A bunch of different things that administrators back then had to do more of.
Hmm.
Now, most apps these days are web apps, but
They're
this was
not
probably
installed
15.
natively on
Yeah, they're not
the
installed
PC.
necessarily on the computer. So this was back in, like, 15 plus years ago. And you were doing a lot of stuff like on that particular computer that you had to schedule and figure out, and things like that. And so if you needed to do that at a large scale, these apps would allow you to do that. And so they were pretty slick. They worked pretty well. I just didn't know how to charge for them. What I should have done in retrospect is I should have said, even though you can use this app to manage 10,000 computers, you're going to have to pay me more because you're trying to manage 10,000. I should have charged per seat.
Yeah.
What I did was I just charged for the app, and I said, hey, here's the app. There you go. Right.
Interesting. And who would have been like a target client for a product like that? I'm imagining like small to bigger businesses potentially.
Yeah, larger businesses, but even small business. Like basically, if you had anywhere from maybe 20 plus computers,
I see.
this is something that you could benefit from. But once again, that was one of those things that I had it out there and it was working. But at the time, it was also like a ton of changes happening with tech, and so you're trying to keep up with the latest code stuff while managing an old code base. Obviously, this is all before AI.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got to be where I was like, all I'm doing is sitting in front of a computer all day, writing code.
Fixing
and this is not what I want to do with my life.
essentially.
Fixing problems. And yeah.
How were you
And
like
so
selling that product?
Oh, it was great. So, well, back then you could just upload stuff to like a website or have it hosted somewhere. And there were sites, I guess they still exist, but there were sites where you could just announce your software kind of like to the world.
Okay.
And people would go there and review it. I can't remember what they're called. I don't think we ever use them now. It's not like GitHub or anything, but there were just sites that you could put stuff on.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, if you had enough SEO, I guess, on your website, people would just find it.
Mm.
And so, I think I made about 60, 70 grand a year or something like that, which was great.
Hey, and that's on top of the salary for your other gig?
Yeah.
I'd say pretty good. And this is probably inflation adjusted, so that might be 100 and plus.
Yeah, exactly.
So why did that business not continue? You said you were just kind of sitting on the computer all day doing bug fixes for code.
Yep. And this is one of the things that I like to talk to entrepreneurs about is like there's talents that you have, but they've got to align, or they should align with where your heart's at. Like, what are you really gifted to do as an individual? I'm far more creative. I'm a technical guy, but I'm far more creative and passionate about that. And I wanted to do something hands-on, something tangible, something that wouldn't, where I'm just sitting in front of the computer all day. And I learned that about myself. And as a dev, as I moved on past that software and I was still working as a dev, me and the other dev guys, we would like see a bulldozer outside or like somebody mowing the lawn on like a really cool piece of equipment. And we would just go hang out by the window and be like, man, I wonder if you'd let me use that bulldozer for like 30 minutes, that'd be sweet. Like just being outside, doing something else. Now, a lot of guys, maybe they're not wired for that. Maybe they're like, no, I actually just want to sit in my cave with my headphones on and just do code all day. And then the rest of the day can just be whatever I want to do. And that's fine. They find a lot of enjoyment out of it. But it wasn't hitting right for me. And so I learned that about myself. And so it was several years of kind of going, what do I want to do really that I think would satisfy the entrepreneur itch and also be meaningful, make an impact and not feel like I'm just chasing my tail with the software side of things.
How did you initially get into the software business in that world?
Yeah. So I was in the Navy, and when I got out in 98, basically if you had a pulse and you knew anything about tech, they were like, yes, we need somebody to hire.
Yeah.
Right? It was the greatest time to get hired for tech stuff. I started out by just unplugging computers, replugging them in at a different location, like really basic jobs. That turned into tech support. At some point along the line, I started working for Microsoft and did their tech support. And then that's like a big thing to put on your resume. So when I joined one of the banks, and at that time I wasn't doing software dev, I was just doing support stuff.
Yeah.
And I had needs, for like, it'd be cool if type of scenarios, like it'd be neat if this was automated or if people could just do this. And for the team that I was on with one of the banks, I would come up with little scripts and little solutions, not really knowing what I was doing, but just, kind of tinkering around and figuring it out. And eventually I wanted to go back to work for Microsoft, which didn't happen, but I wanted to. And I had a call with them. This was years later. And they were asking me questions. Like I'd been doing code, quote unquote, for a long time at this point. But they were asking me questions I just didn't know the answers to at all. Like they were so far out of my league that I didn't understand anything. So I had to go back to square one and like learn it legitimately instead of based on like just kind of figuring things out as you go, And so I did that. And then from there, I got a job as a dev working for another company. And just kind of rolled with it like that. And we actually use a lot of the development principles and a lot of dev skills that I have still in our companies now.
Where did you do the development training?
Online.
Really?
Yeah. It was just, gosh, what was the website? This stuff seems like so ancient to me now. Like anything from like 2012 to 2016 just feels like forever ago,
Mm-hmm.
tech wise, you know. I can't remember, but there was an online place where you could just learn stuff. They're really good about courses that would just kind of walk you through
Yep.
like a real deep dive
Yeah.
on dev
There's like
and stuff. So it was
Coursera
great.
and stuff like that, but I'm not sure if that was specifically the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't that. It was something specifically for developers, and maybe it's defunct now. I don't know,
Mm.
but at the time, it was super useful, and I just dove in, man. It was awesome.
Well, I mean, it sounds like your career was going in the right direction. You got this development skill. You had a job utilizing that development skill. You built an application. It's pretty successful. So, like, at what point do you decide, like, I'm going to give all that up and I'm going to like build things with my hands? I'm sure if you're telling your family that, they're like, "Oh, I don't know about this."
Well, I started something called Wolf and Iron, and this is separate from Rustic and Main.
Okay.
So Wolf and Iron is a started as a blog, then became a podcast, and basically it's a mission to help men just become better men,
Mm.
fathers, husbands, leaders, and so on. And I started that about 2.5 years before Rustic and Main.
Okay.
And I was thinking like maybe that's going to be my thing, right? Like I can do blogs, I can do podcasts, I can do something, but I wasn't really sure how to monetize it.
Yeah.
Part of the hang up there was that a lot of the help that I got as a guy, as a new dad and all that, it just came for free. Like men invested in me. I didn't have to pay for it. It didn't have to be a course. It was like, let's get coffee, let's get breakfast, that kind of stuff. And it was really helpful. So I didn't really have a good handle on like what I want to do to make that make money. Um, and at the same time, I think I made a wood ring for myself and then posted it on Wolf and Iron.
Mm.
And it became like the number one blog on the site.
Hmm.
Like not about necessarily like manliness or anything. It was just something that other people were interested in and learning about. And so, uh, while I was doing Wolf and Iron and I posted that blog and some other things, I was also interviewing guys that just had cool careers, kind of like what you're doing,
Yeah.
right? It's just like, I called it captains of industry. And the ones that fascinated me the most were like the guys who did the leather working or the woodworking or knife making or something. And it was just a very hands-on sort of tactile type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife is game. Like, we've never kind of been like the typical, I guess, people. She's very entrepreneurial herself and very much a visionary with things. And so when I was like, look, we've got this ring business. I think it would be cool. Let's give it a shot. It's not going to cost that much to start. She was like, yeah, let's go for it. And then when it started making money and I still got my regular job, I said, look, I think this could be a thing. Like, I think I just want to quit my job and just do this. And she was like, okay, cool.
Hmm.
And at the time it was like, if it doesn't work, you could always just go back to IT, now maybe not with AI because there's so many cutbacks with that, but who knows?
Yeah.
But at the time it was sort of like, it's a bit of a risk, but she could tell with me that like, even though I was doing something that brought home the bacon, it was very easy. It had a lot of perks to it. It just didn't sit right with me, doing the dev stuff.
It's kind of unfulfilling.
Yeah, unfulfilling. It just didn't hit my heart right. And so she could see that I was lighting up about all this other stuff. And she was like, that's awesome. Like, I want to be a part of that.
When did you get into like ring making? Was this woodworking? This is like with metallurgy? Like when did that start?
So I've always been a tinkerer. I grew up in the country, backwoods in Tennessee. And so if we wanted something fun, we had to make it a lot of times.
Right.
And so I just had a lot of woodworking knowledge. Prior to making the wood ring, I had made some bows, like bow and arrow bows out of wood. So I had some exotic woods in the house and some basic woodworking materials. And so I was actually just walking through the house one day and I was like, I want a new ring. But I don't know what to make it out of. And I thought, I could just make one out of wood. Maybe that would work. So I just drilled a hole in a piece of wood, wore it out that day. And I think this is back when I had hair. The lady at the barber shop was like, where did you get your band? And she started asking questions about it. And I was like, I told her about it. And she wanted me to make one for her and so on. But there was enough kind of clues that like, maybe this could be a thing. Like guys really don't have anything that's like, other than your typical gold band or maybe a band that's got some diamonds on it or something. Guys don't really have much. And then of course the silicone bands, those were big still back then. I was like, men need something that has like a history to it and something. And I had a lot of knowledge about different woods just because of, the bow making and stuff that I had done. Even from a historical standpoint, I knew quite a bit. And so I thought, this could be cool.
So you put that blog post out and that gives you a little bit more feedback that this is a thing.
Hmm.
And then do you spin up a store pretty quickly after that?
It was about a year to a year and a half later, actually.
Okay.
So it took a while, and essentially it was me playing around, kind of like testing the prototypes for a
I
while.
see.
And I'm doing. I mean, we got little kids in the house still, or teenage kids, I guess, at this point. And I'm still got a day job that I've got to go to. So I'm like getting up at like 4:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
and then working late at night at home, just trying to figure out like how do you do this? Like how would this work? And I was geeking out on it. Like I really just enjoyed it. I didn't feel pressured to do it. It was just like this is really fun. I want to figure this out.
Yeah.
And so it was probably about a year later, maybe from the point that we decided this could be a thing. It was probably about a year later when we actually launched. And I think we opened up an Etsy store first, sold a ring that month, and then sales just started taking off like crazy.
So what was that first model ring like?
Oh, let's see. It was a teak and whiskey. So it was actually teak wood from the USS North Carolina battleship on the
That's how did
outside.
you get that?
So they were actually, that particular ship went under, it got decommissioned forever ago, but it went under a restoration project back in the 90s.
Mm.
And they ripped off all the old teak. Now, this is the teak from like World War II. All the sailors walked on. Like, this is the legit stuff. And they were selling them off as blocks, like maybe a 7-inch block of wood for like $50 a piece. And so back then, we just bought a couple of blocks. Eventually, we went down to the ship and just bought everything they had.
Oh, all right.
And we did that. We've done that for a couple of different battleships. Not everything they've had, but we've bought quite a bit of stock from them.
Right.
But anyhow, so that's how we did that. And then on the inside of that, you could have your own, like whatever whiskey barrel was like your favorite brand. We would just, we would find the barrel tops out there for most of them, and just inlay that there. So it was a solid wood ring. That's how we did them when we first started, like for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And and I had a little inlay of like gold or brass, So it was pretty cool. And an interesting kind of like, maybe this is a thing kind of story. We had the local magazine, QC Exclusive, came out and just did like some photos of me in my garage and stuff, and wrote a little story about it, which was cool in and of itself. Like, that's great. Well, I'm waiting for the magazine to come out because I want to see it, because this is kind of like a big deal.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. Right.
I'm geeking out on this, but I don't get any kind of notification about it. And some time goes by, and apparently it had come out, but I get a phone call on my cell phone, and it's this guy, and he's like maybe it's his wife. They're on the road, and they're like, "Hey, are you open?" And I'm like working out of my garage. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have a store.
What do you mean open? Like,
Yeah. I said, I was like, well, I'm here. And they said, well, my husband lost his ring at the beach. We saw that you saw your ad, or we saw your article.
Yeah.
We wanted to come by and get something. And I said, all the rings that I have are actually for customers. Like, but you can come by and look, but they're all kind of spoken for. So I literally met, it was an older couple, and an older man, shorter, came out of the car, and I met him on the front porch. And I'm showing him these rings, and I don't know if he kind of didn't get the idea. Like, these are already spoken for. Like, these have got to be mailed out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he said, "What's that one that you're wearing?" And it was like my first teak and whiskey ring that I had made. And I kind of pulled it off, and I showed it to him. And he put it on. He said, "Man, that's a perfect fit. I'll take it." And
You're like,
and I said, "Okay."
still,
And
still not sure if it's for sale, but depends how much, right?
yes, right. So then I went over to the lady in the car, and she gave me some money. I felt like I was doing a drug deal.
Yeah, right.
But it was just such great confirmation. Like, if I can sell a ring off of my front porch, there's a good chance that there's a market for this. And I don't remember exactly what the time frame was for that, but from when we launched in April of 2016, that November, I remember we were out at somebody's house for Thanksgiving, and my phone was just going cha-ching, cha-ching, because of the sales,
Wow.
right? And I got worried because we were getting so many sales. I didn't know if I could make them all.
Right. So
And,
are these all custom, or are they semi-custom?
No.
How'd that work at that time?
Yeah, it's a good question. At the time, I don't think they were very custom at that point. I think we had like maybe 6 types of rings that we could sell, and the Etsy store was still there, but most of our sales were coming from Shopify at this point.
Yeah.
And so I think they were probably just our standard designs, and it wasn't a lot. Like, maybe it was like, I don't know, like 11 rings we sold maybe in one day or something, which is a lot, I guess. But at the same time, it was enough where you're kind of like, oh my gosh, like, this is, I don't know how. I'm thinking I got to get back to the house, start making rings.
Yeah, right.
But once again, great confirmation.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you said you were using wood from these battleships. What materials do you use at the current moment in time? And also, maybe could you tell me a little bit about the history of like rings? Are rings, have they always been metal? Like, have they been wood in the past? Like,
Oh, that's a good question. So there were people doing wood rings around the time that I launched, but it was a kind of a small pocket.
okay.
A couple of Etsy stores and stuff, and varying quality, and they would basically just use like veneers and just wrap those. And so they weren't really they would look nice, but they weren't really that interesting
What do
personally.
you mean when you say
And I wanted to
veneer?
use stuff
You use
like so like if you look at like a modern piece of furniture, a lot of times it might look like wood, but it's actually on the top of it's just this really really thin layer of wood, maybe like I don't know, 30 seconds of an inch thick or something like it's
yeah.
really, really thin. And they basically just glue it to the top,
Yeah,
and you can
that's
just
what
buy
my
these
desk is
things.
right here for sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they'll chip up and stuff like that. And like I said, it can be real wood, and they look cool, but there's no real story or history behind it. And so that's what I wanted. And I wanted to be able to use stuff that people send in. So um, yeah, I think for the majority of time, men's rings have been uh, metal of some kind. Like if you go way back, you can find some leather rings and stuff.
Hmm.
In history. But most of the time it's been metal. And I think there was a long period of time when men, other than for fashion, they didn't really have a wedding band. Like that wasn't always a thing. So, but in our recent history, it has been. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I know the story goes that my grandfather was a farmer, and he got the wedding ring, the day he got married, and then he set it on the shelf for 36 years or something like that while he was farming,
yeah,
because he's like, yeah,
yeah,
I'm gonna like this is dangerous. You don't want your
yeah,
hand to get caught in a machine of some sort. And I think he did
yeah,
actually lose part of a finger, not related to the
yeah,
wedding ring. So yeah, he had good reason to be cautious
yeah.
about that.
No, that's legitimate. I mean, that's degloving is what they call it. Don't go look up the pictures of it on the internet unless you're a special kind of person.
Now you
Uh,
almost got me tempted.
yeah,
So what are the like? Are there issues associated with wood, because you said you kind of have gone away from that, or you're
yeah.
using it, but you're using it like on the exterior of the ring?
hmm Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, guys are hard on their hands, and you can tell them like, look, you've basically got a piece of history here in a lot of cases, or you've got something that's really meaningful and rare. You just be careful with it. Treat it like an heirloom.
Yeah.
But guys they've never worn jewelry, they've never had a ring,
Hmm.
and so they go to the gym, they go rock climbing, they go move stuff in their yard, beat them all up. And so over the years, we've had to repair them, and and that's fine. We don't mind doing that to a degree, but at some point, you're like, look, we obviously can't educate the public well enough before they buy the ring. So let's give them a more durable alternative. So we moved to titanium in a lot of cases, silver and gold. And so you basically can still use the same materials, but they're now inlays instead of being the whole of the ring,
Hmm.
being wood.
But that's got to change the process quite a bit. Like if you're
Oh yeah.
using 100% wood, and then you go to now I'm a jeweler. Like I'm not a woodworker any longer.
Basically.
I'm a jeweler.
Yeah.
What was that transition process like? And I assume it didn't happen overnight.
No, because I mean, we didn't start by using metal lathes. A lot of jewelers, or people who make rings, they start with metal lathes because that's their experience and background.
Mhm.
And we started with wood lathes, which are very small and just sort of very handmade. And we still use those quite a bit. But in order to put the channels into the metal ring that you're going to later put wood into or stone or something else, we had to carve those out with a metal lathe.
It's pretty
And so we
fine,
had to
like a
figure,
very fine process, I
yeah,
imagine.
yeah, and you want it to be pretty consistent across the board, but you're still doing it per ring. You're not doing it like in a massive batch, like some CNC machines just knocking these things out.
Yeah.
So we had to figure that out. That actually wasn't the hardest part, though. The hardest part was I'm very particular about like how things look, and so we would make one, and I'd be like, something's off, like it's not quite hitting right, And then we would make another one, and be like, it's just not. I don't know. It should work, but it's something's off there. I'm not crazy about it. And eventually, I think we started. I got some inspiration from like the old aircraft from like the 1940s that were all like aluminum or steel or whatever they were. I
Mhm.
guess they're probably aluminum, and they're just silver and they're just real sleek looking and cool, right? And I was like, I want that, but then I want that in the profile for a ring, and then we'll put stuff in it, and then we got that process down. And once we had it, I was like, that's it, that's the look, that's the curvature, that's the size, everything. And from there, it was just like it all just came together. And sometimes it works that way. Like when you're creating something, maybe a T-shirt or it could be a piece of art. Maybe it's I'm a photographer as well, so it could be like a particular style. Once you get it, you're like, that's speaking to me. Now we're on. That
Mm.
was the hardest part about it, really.
Getting it to look the way that you kind of had imagined it in your mind.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so how does the business scale? Tell me about that. Like first you're doing Etsy, then you decide on a Shopify,
hmm
now you're doing metal rings. Like, and I know you do
hmm
custom. Did custom, was that always a piece of the puzzle, or did custom come
Yeah.
in at some point in time later?
Yeah, that was always a piece of the puzzle. It just didn't get really, maybe probably in our second year, I think is when that really became like people started asking more and more, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do that?
Hmm.
And so we've always done a lot of custom, and we have a really cool customizer on the website that you can go and kind of build the ring, make it come to life. Um, as far as like how we scale, we found that for a couple of years, Etsy was nice because you would get some free, like average. I mean, you put stuff out there and people, it just kind of sells, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember when it was. Other people listening to the podcast, I'm sure, have experienced this as well. But it just became absolutely inundated with like cheap Chinese
Mm-hmm.
knockoff stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like mom and pop anymore. It wasn't like the stuff that's handmade really by some person that's like crocheting something. Or it was like it's just cheap stuff that's being sold as cottage industry, but it's really not.
Right. Interesting.
And that yeah, and so that just became like, man, like we can't. That's not one. It's not our vibe. It also just cut our sales like crazy. Because if you're looking at something that's like, here's a $150 ring and here's our $700 ring,
Yeah.
And we know that they're not the same, but the customer doesn't.
Do you think that was something that changed in the platform, or do you think that was just Chinese sellers found out that this was a good market?
That's a good question. I don't know how they ever kind of gated it in the first place.
Or
So
like, are they attempting to go back? I've heard, because I've never done business
yeah,
on Etsy before. We've done hundreds of millions on Amazon, but we never
sure.
made anything custom. So like Amazon's the opposite of Etsy, where it's like, you're not allowed to customize. Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we kind of pulled out of Etsy maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, like officially. We
Mm-hmm.
cut back way long before then, but I don't know. I'm not really sure why it started happening, other than just a plethora of people just doing it, maybe making money, and it just kind of happened. But like I said, I don't know how they ever sort of gate kept it before from that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how would you know that somebody's really like making scarves in their home versus just reselling stuff?
Right.
So
Well, I kind of
yeah,
heard some rumblings that maybe Etsy was not doing as well as they had.
hmm
It looks like,
yeah,
I'm looking at their sales over time. It looks like they actually maybe had their biggest year in 2023, and then 2020
hmm.
or yeah, 2024, and then they're a little bit down in 25. Yeah, that is what I kind of heard, that maybe the market wasn't there. And I know some Etsy sellers got really upset at certain fees that came in
Hmm.
and costs to the,
Yep,
and these aren't like big businesses that are like, well, we're just going to eat the fees. It's like, no, I'm not going to make scarves if I don't make $12 a scarf. Like, I'm out, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then like early on, I think because of Wolf and Iron or something else, I was a little bit familiar with Shopify. I was a little bit familiar with running ads, and I was like, if we're selling stuff on Etsy, we don't know anything about our customers. We can't retarget them.
Right.
We can't advertise to them specifically. So let's put our stuff on Shopify. And I think that was a game plan early on. So maybe like within 2 months of launching the Etsy store, we were on Shopify, and it was immediate. Like, that's going to be our way forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still our platform, and we do ads. I mean, we have a great local shop as well, like a
Oh,
showroom.
really?
But yeah, in Huntersville. It's actually Luke Combs, the country singer. I don't know if you know him.
It's certainly very famous. I'm not a
Yeah,
country guy, and
yeah.
I know
So
Luke Combs, of
yeah,
course.
so you know who he is, right?
Yeah.
It's actually built in his childhood home. So we actually bought his childhood home
Whoa.
and revamped it, and then and put our store in there. And it looks great. It's fantastic. So if you're in Huntersville or close by to the Charlotte area, drop on by. It's cool. Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
I'm sure that has been sold multiple times, like after he moved out of there. Do you guys have any relationship or any knowledge of him?
No relationship. It was funny because when we went there to look at it, we had just known that it was a cool little house that some businesses had been running out of for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
You could kind of see like people would be in and out, same owner, but they would lease it out to different businesses, I guess.
Yeah.
And we just thought that'd be cool to do something with. So when it came up for sale, we just went by there just to check it out. And the lady was like, "This is Luke Combs' childhood home," and I was like, "I don't know who that is." I was like, country singer, I guess.
That's
I
not
don't
a
know.
sales point to me, lady.
So
Sorry.
they didn't really
Yeah.
do much for me. I was just thinking like, man, this is going to cost a lot to redo,
Yeah.
But we were already in the area, and it was a cool little spot, and it worked out really well. So, but no relation to him. But we've heard little stories here and there ever since we've opened up. I don't know how much is true, but people that used to babysit for him
Yeah.
or different things like that.
You
So
guys should send him a ring someday. I don't know if he's
we,
married,
we keep thinking about it. We've got
married or not.
we've got some. He is. We've got some of the trees that were in the yard. We've cut down. We kept some of the wood from there and some other things.
Oh
So
man, well
if
that's
he ever reaches out,
yeah, that would definitely be cool. So how does the SKU selection like expand? You're doing them wood, and then you're doing them through other
hmm
things. Like, how do you decide on what is the next product to launch? And at what point also are you like, I can't make every single one of these. Like, I need some
oh yeah,
like some machine shop guys to come in here and make these.
yeah. So I was making rings up probably until like maybe our fifth year, sixth year, maybe. I was still making some, I think, here and there.
Okay.
Um, but pretty early on, like that November when that happened, when I started getting all the, for that first year, we hired somebody to help make them like January of 2017, like so the next year.
Hmm.
And we were still figuring it out. Like we're in the garage, like I'm like, I still had to go to work. And I was like, Jeffrey, here's how I make a ring. Try to do one of these. I'll be back later, check in on it. It was that kind of thing. Right.
Hmm.
And but it was pretty early on, and I knew from some of my other entrepreneurial startup things and some of the things that I've been going through just as a growth as a leader. I was like, I don't. This is not something like I don't want to make every ring for every customer. I really am more excited about growing the business.
Well, that's not true of everybody in the business, right? Like
True.
some of those people go like, I just really like making knives, and then you get to the point
Yeah.
where you got to start doing taxes, and they go, this isn't really what I
Yep.
got into this for. Like, I don't want to do payroll, and then
Yeah.
somebody else makes the knife, and you're like, it's just not the same. It doesn't look the
Yeah.
same. I don't like what
You're
you
right.
did. Well, maybe this business, maybe I just shouldn't grow this business. Maybe I should just stay
hmm
small and I'll just make my whatever 2 or 3 knives a month, and that's pretty good for me. So I think your opinion on that is maybe slightly different from other people's, and that probably comes from
I
I used
agree.
to be a developer. Like now I'm making stuff in the machine shop. Like it'd be all right to sit down every once in a while. Yeah, I wouldn't hate
Yeah.
that.
No, I mean, and scaling was a big part of my background, right? Like we wanted, like when we created an app, we wanted it to like sort of run on its own, not cause any problems, and just scale really well. That was
Right.
like one of our goals, and so I kind of attributed that to business as well. Like if this business is successful technically, then it should be able to manage itself, run itself, and be smooth and not cause too many hiccups. Need updates every once in a while, but other than that, scale well, and all that. So that was sort of ingrained into me, and I already had that mindset going into it. Um, yeah, and I just knew that I was creative enough that I wanted to be involved more in like the new things and where we're going and the direction, more than just like making the same thing over and over and over again, which some people love. Like that's like you said, that's what they want to do.
Mhm.
And some of the happiest entrepreneurs, if you call them entrepreneurs, some of the happiest solopreneurs that I've met are guys that are retired or gals that are retired. They know exactly what kind of how much work they want to do and how much free time they want to have. They say no to a lot of jobs. They say yes to the ones that are fun and exciting for them, or they know they can get done, without a hassle. And they've understood like this is my world and this is the lane that I want to be in. I don't want to try and grow and then find out that I really don't like managing people or doing taxes or whatever else. And they're very very happy.
Yeah.
And so I think that's always an avenue, but it you know some people have to kind of learn the hard way, I guess, before they get
Well,
there.
that's the whole parable of the Mexican fisherman, right? Which I'm sure you've heard.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to scale this business. I like catching 2 or 3 fish in the morning, and then
hmm
sell those, and then I have the rest of the day to dance and have drinks and hang out with my family,
hmm
right? Um,
Yeah.
so, where do you foresee the future of the business going? Is it diversification? Is it more customers? I mean, the wedding industry is huge. I don't know if you saw this,
Massive.
but I'm getting married in 2 weeks.
Nice.
I honestly probably got onto your website like because I'm like thinking I looked for something kind of like this, and then I wore my dad's ring for a while, and I was like, I just don't know if I want to wear like a ring. I don't like having things on my hands.
Yep. A lot of guys are like
I'm
that.
sure I could have
Yeah.
gotten used to it, just like anything else. But I got like a
Sure.
tattoo on my finger.
That's nice.
Um, Not coming from a ring seller. He's like, yeah, get that out of here, man. Buy one
yeah,
of our
yeah.
rings. Um, but so like, where do you see the business scaling up to?
I mean, we're still a pretty small fish in a massive pond. Um, and there's something that where like we will always be niche just because that's, we don't want to be Zales or Brilliant Earth or whatever else, Um,
What's
so
Brilliant Earth? Like, what's their niche?
so they're like engagement rings and stuff, and they do beautiful jewelry. Um, but they're sort of like they're the big dogs, like,
Right.
Jared's, Kay's, whatever comes to mind when you think jewelry store. Their whole vibe is not our vibe. Like if you come to our store, you're going to be like, this is just a cool place to hang. Like I want to be here, right? If you go to their stores, it's glitzy and glamorous, and there's lots of shiny things, and
Yeah.
it's super bright.
Horrible.
And
Went there with my
it's
fiance.
just,
Hated every second of it.
yeah, exactly. So we don't want to be that way. So we think that there's a really good niche for us to be in where we can still expand and grow quite a bit by offering something that's different, a different experience, not only just different products, but different experience. And we have a lot of room to grow. The challenge, of course, is like as you get bigger, you start to play more in their sandbox a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of the big dogs, and it just becomes harder to like, hey, we're out here too, but um, we're not them.
Potentially harder to customize a little bit, right?
Sure, yeah, it just gets more complicated. But we have more products that we want to do. Like right now, we do wedding bands and engagement rings, and we only got into engagement rings about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an industry that's got to grow for us, or a side that's got to grow for quite a bit. And then we have signet rings that we're going to be launching in July.
What's that?
So like you would see them a lot in like Peaky Blinders guys. A lot of times they'll wear it on their pinky.
Mm.
It's just sort of like a small ring that's not. It's more of a fashion ring, but they're just cool looking, like Art Deco or kind of neat. If you look up some signet rings.
With a C
Uh,
signet or with an S?
no,
Oh,
S
yeah.
I S I G
Okay.
N E T.
Okay. Yeah, I
Signet.
see. These are cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we're going to add inlays to them. So, for the guy who's like, hey, I like rings, or I'm not married, but I just want something cool. Hey, we can put a piece of my grandpa's barn in there. We can put some old dinosaur bone in there, whatever you come up with, right? We can throw it in there for you
Hmm.
and make something like really unique in that marketplace for a style that I think needs to come back anyhow, because they're pretty dope when they're done right.
Yeah. So I see you guys do male and female rings. What's the breakout of
Mhm.
your customer base, like male versus female?
Oh gosh, it's still predominantly male, maybe like 80-20, something like that.
Hmm.
It's yeah, just because we're still pretty new to the engagement ring industry.
Well, do you do diamonds on these rings for women? I mean,
Mhm.
my fiance, she wanted a diamond. I mean, I don't know where that came from, but that's just,
Yeah,
her vibe.
yeah, we do diamonds. Most people don't want a natural diamond. One, they're crazy expensive.
Yeah.
There's the whole blood diamond thing associated with them, which is
Yep.
not necessarily true, but maybe. But they go, hey, let's just do a lab grown, which is fine.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just crazy that we can make diamonds now
Yeah.
from like
Right.
facilities. But there's all kinds of lab grown, every kind of stone, just about. So we sell mostly we sell diamonds. And here's the thing about it, a guy would look at a diamond and go, it's just clear. It might as well be glass. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Right? Why are
Right.
we paying
Right.
so much for it? The cool thing is that it actually matches like everything. And so the ladies are a little bit more intuitive about this than the guys typically are. And they're like, I can take a diamond and put it in the center of my ring. And then if I want to have some sort of like more decorative stuff, I can have a band on the outside that I stick with it, and I can use any color that I want. I can have my birthstone rings. I can have, just colorful rings that I like, and it just works.
Hmm.
So I kind of get it from like a fashion standpoint. It's one of those things. It just works, and it also says engagement. I think a lot of people, they just associate that like I'm married, I'm engaged.
Hmm. How does it work? Because I see a lot of, rare metals like gold and silver and platinum in here and diamonds, of course.
Mhm.
Like, how does that work from like a financing standpoint, right? Because are you are you buying these materials previous? They're very, very expensive, right? So then you got
Mhm.
to sit on all this inventory. Like I'm in an inventory based business, so I understand the
Oh yeah,
inventory
it's hard.
business world. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really sit on much inventory at all, honestly, because everything's made to order. So, other than a couple of things that we have that are for prototypes, or maybe a customer's return to ring, weddings get canceled, called off, proposals get canceled, rather, that kind of stuff. We don't really have a lot of inventory except for those types of things, and so we're not really sitting on a lot.
I see.
And it's interesting about the jewelry world too is that they they allow you to do something called a memo, and I didn't know about this until we got into engagement rings.
Hmm.
But what it is like, hey, look, let me just get a stone from you that's, it's a pretty nice stone or a ring or something like that. And I can have it in my shop for up to 30 to 60 days. And if it sells, cool, they get the cut. We just sell it to the customer. And it's just like a regular transaction at that point. If it doesn't sell, I send it back.
Consignment,
Um,
essentially.
Yeah, it's basically kind of like consignment. Yeah. And, companies will do that for stones where they have a plethora of, and it's fine, like lab grown diamonds and stuff like that. If it's a super rare stone, they don't want you sitting on it unless, you're a big seller. So, but there's some things like that you can do to kind of help, kind of get yourself started in the industry.
Mhm.
But for the most part, it's just a customer calls up or emails us or, goes to the website, says, I want this cool thing. And they just pay for it and we make it.
Mm. Where do you get your golds and silvers and platinums from? Like, what's the process like to acquire those things? Are they local to you or not necessarily?
No, there's a couple of big players in the industry. Stuller is one of
And
them.
how are they
And
are they
so
sending you a gold like bar, a bullion? Like, how does that work?
we kind of do it both, actually. So
And also, what's your
for our
address? I'm
men's,
just kidding.
yeah, no, right. Hey, come here. Yeah. When are you not there?
Yeah.
Um, no, actually. So what happens is they will sell grain. So basically, grain is just like small little pellets of gold, and they just sell it to you by the ounce,
Hmm.
and you just get that, and you can melt it down into pretty much anything you want, right? So you can make any kind of ring that you want out of it. Same with we don't for platinum. We typically don't. I don't think we've tried to cast that yet. But we've done silver and gold and stuff like that. So basically, you can just go to Stuller, and there's other companies that are really reputable. And the cool thing is that these guys, they just deal in recycled gold, so they're not out there like mining for gold. They've already got so much of it. I went down to Stuller actually one time. My wife and I went down there for an event. They're down in Louisiana. Great company, by the way. I mean, that's just an aside, but they were really, really cool. Started back in the 70s, and they've just been growing like crazy.
Hmm.
But I went down there, and they had a gold bar on display that you could go into, like in a certain room. It was like a gold brick, like you'd see in the movies, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're
Yeah.
stealing
It's
Fort Knox or something.
Italian job style.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they had it there specifically. It was over $1 million in value at that point. Now it'd be a lot more. Um, and they had it there just so you could pick it up and see how heavy gold was. Like that's how much money they got.
Mm.
They've got jets on standby that are just, it's like their UPS jets, their FedEx jets that are just for taking products out, like to making sure they get to customers and stuff.
Probably also like a security thing too, right?
Yeah, it could be some of that too. Yeah, just trusting that. But it's just wild, like how much money these companies are sitting on. But it's also they've just been in the industry for so long, and they're very. Sometimes you go to like a jewelry store, and the people who work there are very like snooty. You know what I mean? Like they just sort of seem like they're better than you, and they know more, and that's that whole air. But when you meet actual people in the jewelry industry, they're like the most down to earth people because they just like rocks and they just want to make metal stuff.
Right.
Like that's really what it comes down to. They don't have that sort of chip on their shoulder that seems to be, or I don't know what it's called, that sort of air of arrogance that a lot of jewelers tend to put on.
Yeah, superiority kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
hmm
so tell me about these custom rings that you would do for people. Like, what are some of the things that people have asked you to do or sent you, or materials and things like that?
We get sent a lot of stuff that has like a real kind of a tearjerker story behind it,
Mm.
like really sentimental stuff. And we've done, gosh, we've done a bunch. Like one of the earliest couples, one of the first couples that came to us. This is when we were doing wood rings. They were a really young couple, and they got married even younger. And they said when we got married, we didn't have enough money for wedding rings, so we just tied a little bit of thread around our fingers, and that's what we used as our rings.
Mm.
And now we got a little bit of money, and we wanted to have some rings created for us. And they said, "Can you take this thread and put it into our new rings for us?" All right, like we did that. That was cool.
Wow, what a story.
We've had people. There was a lady who she was planning to get married to her fiance, and was going to have a ring made for him. This was already in process. He was a military guy. I don't remember what branch he was in. Ended up getting killed,
Mm.
and she said, "I still want to have the ring made, but can you use some of his uniform in the ring? And I'm going to propose to him. Basically, I'm going to do the ceremony at the gravesite."
Mm.
Um, and so there's tons of stories like that where you're just like, man, like that's just people will send you stuff and it's just a piece of cloth. And if you didn't know anything about it, you would just think, oh, I just want this piece of cloth in there. But they fill out a little form and they write on there what this is about. And like, you can just tell like it's so meaningful to them to have something that they can wear around every day. And it's also one of those things where like, if somebody says, oh, tell me about your ring, they're not just like, oh, I got it from Rustic and Main, it's really cool.
Right.
It's like, well, let me tell you about my grandpa. Let me tell you about where I grew up. Let me tell you about where I met my wife. Let me tell you about whatever. And they've got all these great stories that just opens up, connections of memories for them. Um, that's this kind of stuff we just love to do. I still geek out about it. I get really passionate about it.
Yeah. Do you ever get nervous when somebody sends you like, whatever, this was my grandpa's, stool that he built, and I'm going to give you a
Yeah,
corner of a leg, and you're like, I can't screw this up.
we had a guy send a walnut, and it was a walnut that his grandfather had carried around with him for like years and years and years. For whatever reason, he always had it on him. It was in his pockets.
Huh.
And he said, we want this walnut crushed up and put it into a ring. And it was just like, oh my gosh, if we mess this up, like maybe we got enough for two, but
Right.
You kind of get in those scenarios where you're like, are you sure?
Yeah.
But we do a pretty good job.
That's amazing. How big is the team for you?
We got about 35 people now, I
That's
think.
a big team. That's
Yeah.
not just,
So maybe about 10 crafters, and the rest is either marketing or shipping, customer service, that kind of stuff.
yeah. You guys have a beautiful website. Did you
Oh,
did
thanks.
you have a hand in this?
I did. Actually, we just launched that recently. Speaking of being in front of the computer, so for the last probably 6 weeks, I've been sitting around, writing that with the help of AI. But we just got that launched about 2 weeks ago, so it turned out really nice.
Extremely professional. Looks, yeah.
Thanks.
It's amazing. Well, Mike, man, this has been fun. Is there anything we didn't cover about your guys' story? I mean, it seems like it's been up and to the right and a lot of fun, and you're helping people and doing the right stuff. And is there anything that you feel like you didn't hit on in terms of the jewelry industry in that world?
Well, I will say this, and I should have said this at the beginning. My wife and I both run Rustic and Main. She's been a big
did
part
know
of it.
that, and I didn't tee it up for you.
That's okay, man. It's all good. But we're both very different personalities, and so we've done a lot of podcasts that talk about like we've been on podcasts where we talk about like what's it like to be a husband and wife duo, where you're not always in sync. Like I say something and she hears something else, or she says something, I hear something else. Right? We still have those issues after 30 years of marriage, and it's just like it's a challenge, but it also helps us grow quite a bit. And she's so good at seeing kind of my blind spots. She's not the person who puts on the brakes necessarily, because she's like, yeah, let's go. This is cool. This is a good idea. Mm-hmm. But she still is able to see things that I don't see. And it's been so valuable to the company. And I don't think we'd be where we are without all the stuff that she's done. I'm more visible like in the podcast space and that kind of stuff. She's been more behind the scenes, but she's been absolutely critical. And I will say too, that it hasn't been all up and to the right. It has been like, if you look at our just metrics financially, you're like, whoa, this is great. But practically, as every entrepreneur knows that's been through the ringer, it's like you hit a milestone and you're like, oh, this is great. Like, this is so easy. This is great. And then it plateaus for a while all these problems shake out. And it could be people aren't the right fit, or you need new processes or something. And then you ramp up again, you kind of scale up a little bit more, and the same thing happens. And so as you hit these different kind of milestones, usually like the 1 million, 3 million, 5 million, so on, you kind of get stuck a little bit. You got to figure things out. And so it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to take a step backwards. Like you said, this process doesn't work. It worked at 1 million. It doesn't work at 3 million. We have to go backwards and build a new process. And everyone's like, why do I have to fill this form out every time I do this thing? And you're like, I know that you never did that before, Rick. I get it. But like, trust me, it's going to be fine. Sometimes employees bail and they're like, I don't want to do that. That's not why I'm here. I didn't want to do that. That didn't come to this.
Yeah.
What,
going from garage culture to more of a, hey, we need to be professional, and
sorry, you got to start clocking in. Like you got to clock in now, like, and you got to clock out. And yes, we have like a defined lunch schedule, because you find like you just can't have no rules once you have like 50 or 60 people. And it's like, I wish that we could, but like someone will take advantage of it, and then before you know it, the culture slips and it's tough. What are like the role differences between you and your wife?
That's a good question. We've kind of bounced between like both being CEO, one or the other, depending on like where we needed to be elsewhere in the business. So we both kind of have worn that hat, and we both kind of still do to a degree, even though I'm like the official CEO right now. And we've both been the integrator, which is that sort of like that next piece down, right? We use EOS in our company.
All right.
So the COO or the integrator role. So we both have worn that hat. Mm-hmm. On the marketing side, where we spend a lot of our time, she's the marketing manager or marketing kind of director. I'm more of the digital marketing guy. So I oversee a lot of that. So that includes our products and website, various things like that. And then I do all the dev stuff. She's been really heavily involved in the financial side of things
Mhm.
because she's good with numbers, not me.
Mm.
So I'm more like, is this going to make us money? It is cool. I can see how those numbers add up. But when you start looking at spreadsheets and stuff, I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
My interest level just goes way down, right? But she can handle that a lot better than me, and she's smart. So so we've kind of worn those different hats, and she's done a lot more culture keeping, and I say HR on the positive side of things,
Yeah.
right? So like, what do we, especially like she's got such a great heart for people who have like something going on in their life.
Hmm.
Where I kind of come from the corporate world of like, you've got your personal life and then you've got your work life, and they don't necessarily need to intertwine. But when you're in a small company, they do. And so somebody gets pregnant or somebody has a sickness or an illness or something goes on like that, she's immediately like, I want to help them. What can we do? Where can we bend the rules a little bit and give them something extra? So she's been great about that kind of stuff. And I'm sort of like over here, like, here's a new product that we're creating, or uh, I'm not heartless, but it's she's so much better at that than I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of pretty much all of those roles, especially as we scaled past 30 people, 40
Hmm.
people, 50 people. And I was in that HR role, and it's hard because you're like, I do want to help these
Hmm.
people, but then you see more and more stuff happen. And again, it's like, well, I can't create this new special rule for this person because they're pregnant, but
Yep.
they only worked here for 2 months. So it's like, well, what do we do with that kind of thing? Um,
Yep.
one word of advice, because I just had a business partner buyout. It was a good thing for all of
Mm.
us and everyone involved. But the one thing that I don't think we ever quite figured out was how to separate our roles and make sure that they were like well defined and well
Mm.
separated, so that it's like Mike has his thing that he's engaging in and he's going to own it, and we trust that. Because there was just too many
Hmm.
crisscrosses for us where it was like, well,
Agreed.
I want to manage that, but I don't really want to be involved, but I need to know what's happening, but I don't want to like sit in the meetings, but I still want to have final say. Um,
Yeah,
so that was a lesson that I had to learn the hard way. But the business is I think in a great spot now because of that, and everyone's
that's good.
excited for the next chapter. So
Yeah, I think partnerships of any kind are tough,
oh yeah.
just for that reason, because we don't all have just like one gifting. Like, I'm just the operations guy, and somebody's just the finance or the HR person, right? I mean, especially in a small business, you got to wear a lot of
Oh yeah.
hats, and inevitably, some decision that somebody else makes may affect your department, and so you kind of want to have say. So it is tough to separate those things out. What we've tried to do is make it official. Like, whenever it's like, okay, you're going to take over as COO now or integrator now, it's like we change that in the hierarchy, and it's like, look, this is your role. You're that person. We let everybody know. We've had seasons where like somebody gets, like one of us gets sick or needs to recover from something, and so it's like, all right, I'm taking this on. Everybody, here's the new change. And then if it's opposite, okay, we're changing this up. So we try to make it very clear, and I think in that area we've done a good job, but we still talk about everything, and kind of checks and balances with each other, which has been good.
That's awesome, man. Well, Mike, I'm excited for the next chapter. Maybe I gotta send you something from my family and get a ring made. Like I said, I got this tattoo, but maybe could I get a signet ring with, with something from my
That'd be
family?
sweet. Yeah, yeah. Be on the lookout, man. Sign up for the emails and be on the lookout. They should be launching in July. That would be really cool. I think you'd dig it. And here's the thing I tell guys too: like, if you get a ring, maybe you're not a guy who likes to wear a ring, but it may be one of those things that you want to have on certain occasions.
Hmm.
Like, just like you've got a nice watch for certain occasions, you got a nice ring for certain
Yeah,
occasions, a nice suit for certain occasions. It's like, just get one, and it's going to make your wife really happy that you dressed up a little bit extra for her. And this is something that we found out too early on, was that the ladies would get super excited about their engagement ring and show it off, right? Um, and then the guy would go pick out like a silicone band, and she was actually like pretty disappointed, like sad, because she wanted him to have something that he was excited about with this whole wedding thing.
hmm,
And now we've kind of got the opposite, where like the guy gets his super cool ring, and she's got an engagement ring, maybe not from us, but his has just got so much story in it, and it's just so cool, and everybody's asking about his stuff, and she's like, oh, okay, I guess I guess that works. But she's really happy that he's got something that he's excited about, because there's a lot of times it's like that's the only thing in the wedding that the guy cares about at all.
well,
You know,
yeah. I mean, if we'd had this conversation 6 weeks ago, man, I would have been signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yeah,
Well,
it's all good.
thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you, man. Where can people catch up with you and find some of the stuff that you guys do at Rustic and Main?
Yeah, head over to Rustic and Main. That's like Rustic and Main Street, not Maine, the
Yep.
state, and .com, and check us out.
Sweet. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks.